Well, for the Torah portion, this particular Shabbat, it's called Naso. And in the very beginning, it mentions this idea of raising up. And there's a text that so many of us will be familiar with. It's in English, sometimes we call it the priestly benediction. In Hebrew, it's Birkat Kohanim. Birkat, like bracha, like Baruch, the blessing. And Kohanim, we know what a Kohen is. A Kohen is a priest. There is descendants of Aaron from the tribe of Levi who are known to be priests. Kohanim. Today, Kohanim are all unemployed. There's no job for us within the sacred temple because there is no temple standing in Jerusalem. But once upon a time, they had real jobs to do. Sacred tasks of taking care of the tabernacle, taking care of the temple, the holy ark, and everything that was in it. And in this text, there's a blessing that in some traditional communities is still done in a really unique way. And that blessing, we've known it. It starts off Yivarechecha, right? Yivarechecha, Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. May God look kindly upon you, always be gracious, loving to you. May God reach out to you. I often translate it as, may God reach out to you with tenderness and give you peace. And one of the first things that I think of whenever I say this priestly benediction, right after my own daughters and holding their heads when they're little girls and sharing this blessing, I think of Leonard Nimoy. I can't help myself, right? Exactly. Now all of you are kind of doing the whole Spock thing. Okay, fine. So there is this idea of blessing that infiltrates even Star Trek. There's this idea of blessing that infiltrates everything. That somehow God can bless us. And there are folks, according to Jewish tradition, who have the task, the one thing that a Kohen is still traditionally able to do and is his job, is to extend this blessing. Now, once upon a time, this was part of the ancient temple worship system. This was reason enough for people to make the journey from wherever they were in that land of Israel, going to Jerusalem, go on a pilgrimage on those festival days, right? Passover, Shavuot, and then Sukkot. They would go and make this pilgrimage, and this blessing was going to be recited. And one of the really interesting things about this blessing is that there is an artifact that was found really close to the Hebrew Union College, where some of us went for rabbinical school. Hebrew Union College, not far from there, in this valley, there was this little bit of silver with these words etched onto it, and it was rolled up to be used as an earring. One of our most sacred of blessings has a real history. It's not just made up, and it's not just in the Torah. Scholars think that it was around King David's time. It's an extraordinary find, not just because it was old, or because it kind of shows that we were really telling the truth about this whole ancient Israel thing. That's not really what it's about. The idea that people held this blessing close to them, that they had it in their ear, that it was something that was shared with a whole community, I find to be just so compelling and truly awesome. And by the way, when they found it, it took them 3 years to unfurl it in order to really see the text. And again, the text doesn't talk about magic. Here's a blessing, poof, I feel better. That's not what this is about. The Kohen in the ancient world was the instrument for God to pass blessing from the Holy One, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, to the people. And that's why each line mentions God as the active agent, and then concludes these little 3 lines, thus shall they link my name with the people of Israel, and I will bless them. This was God's prayer, uttered by those ancient priests, and they were channeling God's words. And it's still performed today. I said it to our youth group kids that were finishing high school earlier today. We went to a park, they had lunch, they had a nice time. We brought a talis out there. We had all of these high school seniors under the talit, and we said, Yivarechecha. And it was beautiful. Now, in a traditional synagogue, a more traditional synagogue, you will see people who are still considered Kohanim, those descendants of the priests, they will take off their shoes, go up on the bima, take the talit, only in the morning service, cover their faces, because the blessing can't be geared for any one person. It's for the entire people. We don't want to be biased after all. So they cover their faces, and they stand symbolically on holy ground, shoes off. It's the only time you can come in here with your shoes off. Boulder. And would bless the people. And it's still done today. Now, for the Reformed Jewish community, we have this whole more egalitarian democratic spirit, so we say it all the time. Whenever there's something special, we will say it because everybody kind of deserves it. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, we would love to say this blessing. But here's the thing. What's really this blessing ultimately about? How can it move us today? Well, we know that the word Baruch means blessing or blessed, and Berech is the knee, and that's the idea of bending at the knee before we bow our heads down. To bend the knee is to recognize God's sovereignty, to recognize God's place in the world, and how we can say that is so incredible and so filled with awe that I can actually bend my knee and humble myself. And as soon as we acknowledge God's amazing, awesome, some might say power, others might say energy, whatever that something is of the divine, we immediately speak a word that closes the gap between God and us. The word is atah, you. So all of that majesty with the baruch and the bending, now it's just you, God, you, ancient Israel, you, Fred, Holly, all of us. That's so intimate just to say you. And when we bless people, we bestow something upon them. We give them our good wishes as a gift. We offer some strength or comfort. We often will use blessings even to bless God, which is a little chutzpah on our part, that we can bless God. I don't think God really needs our blessings. God might be even a little amused by it all, saying, oh, look what they're trying to do. But we need to do that. We need an atah, you, God, in order to build a bridge so we don't feel so distant, so that we can have a connection. We can have a moment even of intimacy. And so when that last thing I want to share is when we have these blessings, everybody receives gifts as individuals. The rabbis teach that the priestly blessing is recited in the singular because God has given each of us gifts. And this blessing is a way for us to connect to the one that we call God. But the most significant teaching for me is from this one of the older Hasidic rabbis of Poland, the Matzitzer Rebbe. And he taught, when the Torah says, thus shall you bless, this particular sage, he would teach that Aaron and his descendants should bless the people as they find them. Don't look for the best, don't look for the most important, not for the greatest scholars or the most righteous of men, for every single person deserves to be blessed. That's what I wanted to leave you with today. It is in the singular because each and every one, without exception, is deserving of God's blessing. Now, the rest is up to us. What are we going to do with that? How do we feel about that? Some of us have a lot of baggage about this idea of God, but then when they talk about something spiritual, it sounds a lot like God to me. It doesn't have to be the almighty, all-powerful. What about intimate? What about parent? What about lover? How do we have these encounters? That's the truth about blessing. I think words can turn a moment into an event, even with something as simple as Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God look kindly upon you and always be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yisam lecha. Shalom, shalom. May God reach out to you with tenderness, true tenderness, and bring you a sense of wholeness every day to receive such a blessing can be transformative because I can feel loved. And if I can feel loved, then maybe we can share some of God's love with others. Okay.